Well, good afternoon. You can hear me today. People outside are turning around. Well, this has been a great week, and from this is my first charrette involving a comprehensive plan, and I have not been able to attend them all, but I have followed them, and what I'm understanding is participation has been good. We've gotten people that are engaged and interested, and that's where we need to be hearing from, and providing this opportunity is exciting. I know for me it's exciting, but I think also for the city, and to allow those that have that interest in having their voice heard. And certainly there's many of y'all, and I know many of y'all are very involved in wanting to see a complete comprehensive plan for the city. And I for one am right there with us, and I appreciate Demi and her leadership in terms of pulling this together, pushing the council towards this, because oftentimes we get involved in things we don't fully understand what we're doing. So I hope this isn't being recorded. Let's delete that part. And but anyway, thank y'all all for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Demi at this point.
Thank you, Mayor West. Real quick, I just want to give a thank you to everyone that has dedicated the time and put in effort to this plan. This is just the beginning. It's just the community goals before we go and draft the plan. So there'll be another round of engagement after this. But again, just want to say thank you guys so much. And I'm excited to hear what we've learned over the week and what our community wants. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Demi. Let's see. Good? Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for coming. My name is Samuel Haas. I am joined here today by Victoria Chavez, by Alfonso Camacho, by Frank Rotnowski, and by Nico Molina. We are all from Able City. We had a great week, and we are excited to kind of recap with you in this work in progress presentation. Little agenda for today. We're going to do the team introduction, which we just did. Comprehensive plan introduction. Then we're going to do the timeline process. We're going to recap, and we're going to show you our 5 big ideas that you all told us, and then we'll have some final thoughts. So, like I said, we are from Able City, from San Antonio. We really put our hat on our integrated approach, where we get to flex all our muscles, where we do a little planning, a little architecture, a little economic development, and most importantly, community engagement, which is what this week was all about. Comprehensive plans, we've done a few before, but it's always exciting to come into a community and really get into the nitty-gritty with everybody. So, again, here's everybody that was here this week. We had a couple in office that were supporting us that weren't here, but as you can see, a bunch of familiar faces up on the screen there. Our team also consisted of Kittleson and Associates they were our transportation engineers from Houston, and also Pata & Co., and they were doing a lot of the infrastructure work. Our timeline, charrette, this is our final event in the charrette, February 2026. So after this, we'll go back, we'll do some drafting, and we're going to present what we come up with in our draft to the community, and then we will have everyone in Beaumont comment on it and provide us some feedback. Hopefully by the end of summer, we will have a final adoption and plan. So what is a comprehensive plan? Comprehensive plan, we've been talking about it all week. It's a community vision. It's a guide for growth. It helps communities compete for things like funding, but it's also a tool to help to build quality of life here. It's goals and policies at its core. What are goals and policies? It's a goal is an overarching vision. It's update the city's zoning code, and then the policy helps reflect it, refines that further, and it goes into each one of those. What it is not codes and ordinances. Codes and ordinances come later. The rules follow the guidelines and the goals and the policies that we adopt in the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan is really the foundation of everything, whereas, and this is where all the things, the code and the updates come later on. This is where we find the vision. This is where we find the direction, is during this process. This comprehensive plan is made up of all of these elements that you see up here. Each one of these will basically be the indicators, the chapters of this vision. You'll see land use, you'll see economic development, you'll see facilities and public services, transportation, housing, parks, trails, cultural and historic preservation, and this comprehensive plan is unique because there's a big resiliency component to this. So I always like to put up this quote here, what is city making? And really what it boils down to is it's the organized pursuit of a better quality of life. Quality of life was a big topic this week. And so, it really, I love this quote here, and it really fits. And who's responsible? Everyone, right? Everyone is responsible for this. The decision makers, the residents, we are all responsible, the stakeholders, and that's what makes it so fun. So, I am going to kick it over to Victoria, and she's going to recap the week for us.
Alrighty, you guys. So, as you can see, a big part of a comprehensive plan is the community engagement. And so with that, we came here for the community charrette. We started on Monday. Most of you guys were actually here, and we asked participants, look at these maps that have various focus areas here in Beaumont and give us your big ideas. What is something that needs to be here? What are challenges or certain strengths that we can look into it? This is actually the foundation for the rest of the week that we can build upon. You guys also presented to the group, telling us, explaining what your ideas are, not just so we can read it, but we can hear you and explain it a little deeper. We also hosted open studios. It's like an open house where people came in, saw what we're doing, what we're working on. We provided various different activities that connected to different elements that build a comprehensive plan. We were mostly located on Main and Downtown Library, but we also traveled this open studio to meet people where they are. We started in R.C. Miller Memorial Library. We also went to Theodore Johns Library and Alma Wilderd Library as well. Not only that, we connected with industries like at Lamar University, where we got to talk about resiliency, host a lecture, have people discuss and dig a little bit deeper on how our connections can build with resiliency and the university. We also hosted various focus group meetings. With that means we meet with key stakeholders like housing, parks, recreation, environmental development and tourism, transportation, cultural and historic. We had 2 meetings every day that lasted about an hour and a half or almost 2 hours for some. We had great discussions. We got to ask questions and really understand at a deeper level on these elements that build the comprehensive plan. Overall, we had about over 100 participants. This isn't even accounting for survey response that we have seen, which have come out to around 263 as of right now. We also hosted around 8 meetings, including this one here. So what was the whole point? What did we hear? Well, we gathered all that information from the different activities we had, like the visual preference survey. As you can see, we calculated the voting there for housing types, housing designs, commercial, street design, parks and open space, signs, and even when people wrote their one bold idea for Beaumont's future. We heard stuff like stronger partnership with Lamar and LIT, homeless issue resolved, and public safety, community vision. We also had a funding game where people got to hold chips and vote and pretty much create a budget of what their priorities of public services are. Also on Monday for the community presentation, we asked you all, what's one word that comes to mind when you think about Beaumont? As you can see, there's a big emphasis on resilience, family, potential, culture. This, again, was repeated throughout the whole week as we talked to various people, stakeholders, the public, and we want to make sure that this plan represents what's here. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Frank.
Hi, thank you all for being here today. Just like Victoria said, we spent a lot of time here, nights and days, and we interacted with so many of you. And what we wanted to talk about is what we learned. And we do have a slide that says 5 big ideas, but obviously there were so many more. But what we tried to do was synthesize things that we heard at the first night on Monday when we were all here working hands-on these hands-on events to the meetings that was just presented to you. And so we tried to bring them together the best we could, and we came up with these. Number one, we've heard a lot: to protect and restore your downtown, to create mobility options that are safe, connected, and are beautiful to be in, to increase access to your parks and nature, and to plan a prosperous city for everyone. And lastly, leverage heritage and institutions as an engine for innovation. So we would like to start with big idea number one: to protect and restore the downtown. And I think just every focus group meeting that I attended or talked to people, this came up: your downtown right here, because you have an amazing downtown. In fact, one person said we have to be able to protect that character. And how do we do that? So what we always like to do is take a deeper dive into the history of the communities that we work in. And really, you have a fabulous history. It begins with the river, and we go back to indigenous tribes that roamed this area, to the both French and Spanish explorations that occurred here as well, to the coming of your railroad, which changed everything, your logging industry and your trade. And then, as I learned the phrase, then there was the boom that changed Beaumont, Texas, and really the world, and the way that that continued to allow this community to prosper into oil and gas, into shipbuilding, into the development of this beautiful downtown that we are here to talk about today. You also, we learned, have really a budding and thriving arts community here. You have a lot of people dedicated to the arts, performing, visual. You have an amazing amount of cultural institutions here for a city of your size, and a newly formed cultural district, which is also really important for a community to be able to grow that. And these are all important aspects of quality of life for a city that people want to come to live in. And you want to be able to retain your younger generations. You're a relatively young population here, but you are losing younger people. We've talked to some that said they've lost their friends, they go to school, they'll go to Lamar, and then they move on. And the quality of life is such an important part of it, and your downtown is the anchor of that. I'm having a loading issue. Interesting. Okay. I don't know, there's a slide out. Sorry, we have a technical, there it is. Okay. Well, that's okay. We can talk about, will that show up? Okay, well, so the really wonderful thing is that you have set the table. You've done all the right things in terms of you have 2 important historic districts in place. As you know, you don't have to have me tell you what you have, but you have the Oaks Old Town District, which is the largest historic district, residential district in Texas, and you also have a national registered commercial district, which, by the way, is really amazing because you're one of the first national historic districts in the country. The whole program was formed in the late 60s with the Preservation Act, and you all started this process in 1978. You further adopted and amended it in 2008. Actually, I was here for that. I was on the Texas Historic Commission State Review Board when we approved that. And so there's what we'd like to say, you have Beaumont, you have it there. You have what other cities wish they had in terms of the quality of your historic fabric. In fact, you have 54 contributing historic structures in your commercial district. That's amazing for the size of your town. And so this is your greatest asset. And we also know that it's seen better days. There are some opportunities that have come up. There are people working on this. But it's a tall task. Sometimes it can seem overwhelming what to do. But we do have a lot of places to go and learn to see how other cities and towns have done it. Texas and throughout this country. Communities turn their downtowns around. And we feel like by working together, we can come up with a really good plan to do that. And we talk about preservation, not for the sake of preservation, although it's important, it's your heritage, it's your stories, it's what makes Beaumont Beaumont. It's also then, how do we restore it, yet bring it back into a contemporary community, new needs, and that's what we refer to as adaptive reuse or repurposing. And it's also important to talk about, when we talk about sustainable design, I mean, basically restoration, the recycling of a building is the ultimate design, is the ultimate sustainable design practice, because you're working with something that exists with amazing stories. And the stories in these buildings are uniquely Beaumont, nowhere else. So these are the things that are important, to be able to identify what best works, what are your needs. Of course, we heard a lot about that this week, and I think one of the areas that rose to the top was bring people downtown by bringing them back to live here, because with that comes other quality of life. Enterprises come and develop your downtown, and to do that, you have some great things going for you, and together we can come up with a great plan for that. Just as an example of somebody comparable in terms of your size, if we just travel a little further to the west, this is San Angelo, Texas. San Angelo has a population of 100,000 people. It was founded on a river with its own unique history and its own unique stories. And they got together when their downtown obviously hit a downturn in the 70s and 80s, and they wound up with 115 vacant historic structures in their downtown. And that was 15 years ago. Today, they've restored and put back into use 85 of those properties. And they did it by overlaying their resources and, most importantly, their community. What did they do? They took buildings like the upper left, an abandoned hotel, the Roosevelt, and the lower left, restored it into loft living. They brought their college downtown. They cultivated their arts districts. And they got property owners and business owners to dedicate themselves to restoring building by building these properties. And if you go to San Angelo today, it's really quite amazing, the turnaround in 15 years. They did it with a dedicated city, working with a newly founded Main Street program, business property owners, and then they did something interesting. They formed a cultural arts overlay district, which really helped lead the way for all kinds of things in terms of guidelines, but also funding mechanisms and funding opportunities. I'm hitting another loading. Sorry? Exit out. They're not loading?
Some of your pictures are not fitting,
So that won't show up? Okay. Well, these were a couple of examples, big bites and small bites in communities, some that we worked on. This is one of an abandoned a 100-room hotel. There you go. This was a vacated and abandoned 100-room hotel that came back into the downtown by reinventing it into housing, and it became 1, 2, and 3 studio, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. I think 68, with restaurants on the lower level, retail, and became a very successful project. And by the way, this wasn't just a developer putting money into it. It was a culmination of things. It was historic tax credits. There's different funding mechanisms that you can overlay to get these properties back into action. Another one was a abandoned car dealership in the upper left. You can see not only abandoned, but pretty much left for dead. And that became a young person's entrepreneur incubator, which received funding from the EDA, the Economic Development out of Washington. And now it's put back and repurposed and is a very lively place where young people come and go and enjoy being in downtown. And the last one that we worked on that we would like to talk about is this upper left-hand corner. This was a very old 1928 residence of a prominent family. Happens to be in Laredo, border town, that over the years left it, vacated it, became abandoned, and you can see the lower left ultimately was completely falling apart. It was red tagged by the city to be demolished. We were able to put a group together. We got grants to be able to put it back together, both externally and restore it in its original grandeur, and internally became a cultural arts border heritage museum for the city with indoor-outdoor spaces used year-round and very, very successful. So these are the kinds of things that you can do. I'm going to pass it over to back to Sam.
Thanks, Frank. So here's another quote, just building on what Frank's talked about, from one of the charrette participants. The downtown needs interesting shopping streets which blend the indoors and outdoors with a variety of spaces for a variety of tenants. Now, we've talked a lot this week about this model that our team built for downtown. And this model is really a best case scenario. It's a maximalist view of what a 25-year vision could look like. It's activated river spaces, it's new buildings, it's all kinds of things. And in this model, we look at the nuts and bolts of it, about building, hundreds of more buildings, about increasing, tenfold the food and drink offerings in the stores and offices. It's about increasing, residential residences, if you will, downtown. And really what this does is it shows that if you bring, 6,000 people downtown in 25 years, you can increase, your revenue down here. And that in turn helps fund city services. It helps fix your potholes. It helps, fix your water mains. If your downtown is performing like it should, it really does help everyone in the city. But, we're optimists as planners. We have to be. We are forward-looking. But we always, it's important to remember that to be grounded a little bit. And we've heard some pushback this week, and that's fine. That's what we're here for. One of the things it's hard to find someone with $15 million in their pocket just ready to catalyze one of these projects. Some people even say that some buildings may not be financially feasible to restore, and maybe that's true. But a couple blocks away from where the Open Studio is this building. And it's seen better days. It's even got the roof collapsed, and maybe this building isn't worth putting a new roof on and putting fancy fixtures and new windows and things like that. But there's creative ways that you can use spaces in the city, and you don't always have to bring things back 100%. You can create markets, you can create public spaces, and these things can be unique and they can be creative. These are the kind of things that people go and they take pictures of on their own because they've never seen anything like it. It's free marketing for Beaumont, right? These sort of things, you take this structure on the outside, you repurpose it. You don't have to put a ton of money into it. You can just make it somewhat, you could put some investment into it and create these spaces. And this isn't a new idea. This happens all over the country. This is a space in Albany, New York. This is Albany Distilling Company. It was on a dead corner of a block. The owner bought this building. It was completely, could not figure out how to renovate it, so he didn't. He secured the walls, he brought it up to compliance, and he turned it into a courtyard. And these are the kind of things that you can adapt, you can preserve the urban environment in creative ways. It doesn't always have to be a $15 million project. Just another example, Birmingham, Alabama, this creative space there that took an old warehouse, made it a creative gathering space for people, and left it all exposed and left it all out there for the elements. But it was still a place that people gathered. We also heard that Beaumont used to have a public square, and I think that's important. That people need a gathering space, something that everyone understands and goes to and knows, like, this is where things happen, this is where people go, where every event is held. In our model, we thought maybe somewhere in the south end of downtown could be that. But there are other options too, right? There's the north end as well. And I think it's important that no matter what, it's you like Frank mentioned, you really have to lean into that, to the river and to being close to that water. Other creative ways. We on Monday we talked about this idea of faith-based housing initiative. If finances are tough, there's creative solutions, and faith-based housing is one of those solutions. You have properties that are owned by faith-based institutions that are debt-free, tax-free, and maybe housing is part of their mission of helping and being supportive. This right here, top image, is of South Bend, Indiana. And the image below is a rendering of what these parking lots look like, and some of these spaces even look kind of like Beaumont, and it's not unique to Beaumont. There's places all over the country that look like this, and what we looked at St. Anthony's Basilica, which has almost 6 city blocks worth of land. We actually, during this process, we met this gentleman who worked there and told us a little bit about the story, that it was all blighted neighborhoods around there, and they tore it down because it just didn't look good. And they have no plan. So we thought, well, what could we do with this property? And we looked at, there was an existing parking lot just across the street. We thought, hey, what if we add some spaces and put some housing in? And and this kind of design is designing with intention, and you want to enhance the assets that Beaumont has, these beautiful buildings that Beaumont has, and you can create beautiful spaces and beautiful places for people to live. And because this is church property, and because you can do it in a nonprofit style, it can be affordable for people. And there's triplexes, there's duplexes, there's single family housing on this property, and this model particularly has a maximum of 37 potential units. These are all 30 by 40 footprints, so 1,200 square foot footprints, and it's to scale, and it includes 17 additional spaces, including, and it's preserving that parking lot, which that was the one thing that gentleman said, is that parking lot is used and we want to keep it. So I'm going to turn it back to Frank for big idea number 2.
Thanks. So, big idea number 2, create mobility options that are safe, connected, and beautiful. And this came up again a lot of times over the course of our week here. One of your citizens said sidewalks are incomplete or they're not functional. And we saw it. This photograph was taken yesterday when we were traveling through the neighborhood, the Avenues. We were just, going through all the different neighborhoods. We've been doing it all week. And here's a perfect example of this woman that couldn't even be on the sidewalk because there's these disconnects. So these are the kinds of things that we heard. We also heard, it's coming from your citizens, not us, streets are ugly, transit isn't convenient, it's dangerous to walk or bike, disconnected, you can only get around the city by car. And Lamar University is very remote from downtown. And it's really funny because we heard that a lot, and so we just did a little Google. It's 3 miles away. It's not as far as it sounds. And quite frankly, you don't have to be in a car to travel 3 miles with other mobility devices. But you want to be able to make that a comfortable and, more importantly, safe excursion. So how do you do that? We start with our sidewalks, and these are some of the principles that make sidewalks better. Make sure they're properly sized, universally accessible, so that woman that we just saw in that wheelchair can easily move through your city, having safe connections, clear signage, making them attractive, of course, security, quality, and efficient drainage. We don't talk a lot about sidewalks and drainage, but it's critically important. We want sidewalks to be useful, comfortable, interesting, and safe. That comes from a quote from Jeff Speck. For those of you that have not heard of him, he wrote the book on walkability. He revolutionized this concept. And if you are interested in following up on these ideas, I would recommend you getting his book. Not only from sidewalks, but also what we refer to as complete streets. Complete streets is exactly what it says it is. It's for everybody, not just for cars. It's to accommodate all modes of what we call mobility. Walking is mobility. Being in a wheelchair is mobility. Riding a bike, it's all of those things together. Scooter, on and on and on. And so what we want is our streets to be safe for everybody. We want to separate bikes from traffic. We want to evaluate some two-way traffic positions to maybe to away from one-way. That is referred to as street calming. Lower the speed, lower the rate of serious injury and death. We also want to look at closing system gaps, closing those gaps, and ultimately making the streets beautiful, streetscaped, shaded, lit, and some beautiful materials. And by the way, when we say that, having a nice wide sidewalk doesn't cut it in Texas. What we need in Texas are trees, shade. Makes all the difference and makes that walk not only comfortable, but desirable. If you can protect yourselves with shade, that's the ultimate way of being able to get through a city. So just a couple of examples of what that could look like here in our own town. This is Pearl Street. I also want to say something else about public. We talk about cities, your city and basically every city. We say that cities are the largest property owners in the cities that they're in. And it's not the largest property owners because they own City Hall and the library. That's not the square footage we're talking about. We're talking about the public right of way. When you add all that up, you all, as a city, are by far the largest landowner here, and it's a public right of way. And so that's why we do talk about it being for everyone. And again, here's a good example. We're heading toward the Gilbert Building, which is really wonderfully being restored. It's great. Continue to spur development. But also, how are there other ways of being able to walk in this area of downtown? And you can see shade, protected bike lanes, and cars still get to drive through, and it's for everyone. Another example we looked at was Calder, coming from Old Town here, some of the streets, and the idea of the widths that you have by looking at what we call a road diet is not going to significantly affect a vehicle. But it could conceptually bring in other modes of transportation. And by the way, that's something we heard a lot about. A lot of your traffic is becoming more and more congested. So by looking at complete streets, you're taking people out of cars, maybe that 3-mile drive from Lamar. Maybe it's not a drive anymore. And if you're providing safe ways for people to get around, you are reducing your traffic, which makes everybody happier. And so something like this could become that. We have another example here of Laurel today, heading downtown, 3 lanes. Well, maybe just a little bit more and being able to provide a safe route for everyone. These are just some examples also. We looked at Magnolia, but we looked at it in sections because of the various ways that you travel on the street. And again, these models, and we use these models, and we'll be identifying other routes, but we just wanted to give you an example of some of the things we're going to be looking as we continue to draft this plan and be able to do that. So what we're talking about is having a connected and active network that eliminates those gaps, creates safe crossings, expanding your greenway and trail. It's not just doing facilities on the streets, but if we get it right, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that in the Parks Greenbelt section, but if we get it right, you can travel very protected on a greenway, a belt, a drainage easement, other ways of moving through the city, and we're going to be looking at that as we develop this plan as well. But yes, also establish separate and protected bike lanes. We heard a lot about people saying, yeah, bikes aren't going to work here because it's very dangerous. And you know, a stripe in the road is dangerous. I'm a cyclist. I mean, I prefer to have a protected buffered lane than just a stripe in the road between me and a 6,000-pound vehicle, right? And then there's also some really good programs out there. We talked about the Rail to Trail programs, which do that. You work with your rails and drainage canals. There's so many different possibilities that exist within your community that you can turn into assets for mobility. And then lastly, we wanted to talk about mass transit. We heard about waits for buses, not being able to get around other than the car, and not only working with your public transportation system, but also there's many new ideas that are coming up, primarily things like the Uber buses that are now available in cities. Lower left, these little electric vehicles. By the way, this is a very successful project that UTSA in San Antonio is doing in its downtown. You can pick up your phone, you can text, and one of these will come and pick you up and take you around. By the way, free of charge. They do it with advertising. So there's a lot of new innovative ideas of other ways of getting around other than just being in a car. So that's what we're talking about. Our goal is to move people through our city, not only with cars. We're not against cars. We're not pledging a war on cars. We're trying to make it less congested and give people opportunities to move around without just having to be in one. So that's idea number 2. Idea number 3.
Hi, everyone. Big idea number 3, increase access to parks and nature. So we heard earlier this week, better connect parks, neighborhoods, and schools through the trails and greenways. Okay. The first thing we think about when we're doing a comprehensive plan, or I should say a good comprehensive plan, recognizes existing adopted plans that the city already has. They put forth a lot of effort already into creating these plans, so a comprehensive plan should support those. One of them, of course, is the Parks for All master plan. That was done recently. That was approved last year. And going through it, I was very impressed. It's got a lot of information, and it's a great resource for Beaumont when it comes to the park systems. It's a long-range guide for investment and development. It helps for improvements throughout the future, next 5 to 10 years, as well as developing. It had an extensive community engagement portion, which kind of what we were doing this week as well. So when thinking about that, some of the goals and objectives of that plan we completely agree with, and we felt that it was important to announce was it covers a lot of investment in the park system. It also mentions equity and accessibility, expanded programs, safety and comfort, maintenance and modernization of existing parks. It also outlines the existing city parks, about 39 of them. As you can see in the map, the plan outlines that they are located a little bit more central, but there are some that are kind of spaced out a little bit, and that's kind of when you can lean into connecting. How can we connect a lot of these parks together and still utilize some of the existing environmental resources of Beaumont? So looking at one of the activities that we did a few days ago, the visual preference survey, we tallied up the numbers of green dots which people agreed or wanted in the city. And the top three are kind of on the top row, a park near the riverfront. You have in the middle a park for gathering, maybe more neighborhood gathering, and then a protected bike lane. So you're kind of looking at a riverfront, something that utilizes existing environmental resources. You have gathering spacing connecting parks, as well as a way to get to these, which would be a connection of a protected driveway or space. That sounds awfully lot like a greenway. So a greenway connects off-street paths for walking, biking, and wildlife, mobility, kind of what we touched upon already. It also enhances ecological, social, and economic value. It's a great way to travel from one end of the city to another, and in between that, being able to connect to different parks along the way. A big item we're discussing is connecting from the riverfront to downtown and Collier's Ferry Park. So we're looking at 2 potential greenways that will bring people from the north and from the southern part straight to downtown, the riverfront of Beaumont. This is a great way to do it. So for example, the first, looking from the riverfront park, going up north to Collier's Ferry, it can highlight a lot of the good environmental resources that Beaumont has. It's a comfortable ride, walking. It's also like a tourist attraction as well, so it does help a lot. Going south now, going from Riverfront Park, you can also access the Terrell Park to the Cattail Marsh. This could be easily achieved in a similar fashion. Biking, there's no way to do this currently, but this is something that could be in the future. A good example is Scioto Greenway Trail in Columbus, Ohio. That one includes a greenway of about 5 miles, and throughout those 5 miles, it connects to 3 city parks. It also connects to a bicentennial fountain, a community center, and then a pool. Something like this can get funded in numerous ways. It can be through grants, it can be public-private partnerships, and there's multiple ways. Now, thinking a little bit more of on a smaller setting, you don't always have to do the large pathways, but to preserve a lot of the resources. But you can also, looking at it from a subdivision standard, a way of thinking, when you're doing a development, especially along the northwest portion of the city, developers, you can kind of tend to go with the traditional subdivision, which is creating a lot of lots, kind of having them all together, not much space, or connectivity. But another way of looking at that is what we call a cluster design, a cluster subdivision. By doing that, you can preserve the existing environment, especially in that area to the north, by kind of creating a little bit of an easement boundary around the residential properties. That can be done through incentives to kind of help, quality of life for those residents. It's almost like going out in your backyard, and instead of seeing like another neighbor, you see trees. You see kind of an access to a trail, which would be great. So what can that look like here in Beaumont? Again, mentioning the Northwest Parkway area, there's currently vacant land, green area. The way to go about that is first by installing and establishing infrastructure, the streets and connectivity to it. Then you can just start phasing out into different developments that bring more attention and more economic development into the area, as well as proceed to residential uses. One thing to keep in mind is creation of larger, adequate open space. That's something we kind of heard a little bit about in our meetings. Yes, developments can include open spaces. Sometimes there's like a lot of units and they have a smaller space, so creating adequate size units for the development is pretty key. By looking into that a little bit further, it can be used in multiple ways, multi-use park areas. It can be used for, of course, gathering, for events, and overall, better quality of life. We also heard bring back the downtown by embracing the river. The river is it holds a key role, and actually, it's embedded with the city. It's represented in numerous ways: art, documents, imagery, and even visitors as well. One thing we think about when we come to Beaumont is the river. It's a part of Beaumont. So, it's one benefit would be to maybe look into revitalizing the riverfront. And that can include different options, creation of a marina, informal restaurants, boat repair. I know this was done in the past, but it's time to possibly revisit it. So what can that look like? Well, we were staying kind of by City Hall this week, and we looked around and we saw a few surface parking areas that were underutilized. And by reimagining those, by relocating parking elsewhere, we could repurpose that area to a park that can be used, activated, and attract people toward that area from different parts of the city. To complement that, we can expand going further and having a larger area with parks and water features. Really is creating a connection from downtown to the riverfront park area. A lot of times, there's not much activity going on or people wanting to go there because there's really nothing to do there. By creating a reason for people to visit, a great use of this area, since it's along the river, is parks and open space. Again, it can be used in multiple ways: gathering, events, leisure. Improves quality of life that ties in with those greenways that I mentioned beforehand. So now I'll pass it on back to Sam.
Thanks, Alfonso. Okay, big idea number 4. Plan a prosperous city for everyone. One of the things we heard is, I think residential is the big missing. It's the fastest way to revitalize your neighborhood. Now, in Beaumont and everywhere in the United States, we tend to build 2 kinds of housing. We have detached single-family homes, and we build those big block mid-rise apartments. I'm pretty sure that's common here too. You see that a lot, especially on the northwest side. We went up there and saw a lot of that. But there's all kinds of different housing options that you can build here, and they can be context appropriate. And Beaumont's boom was in the 20s when we built a lot of these things, right? So these are context appropriate in Beaumont. These could take the shape of all different kinds of units. You could still do your single family detached. Nobody's telling you not to buy one of those, but just provide options, right? You could do single attached townhomes, duplexes, accessory dwelling units. You can do 3 triplexes, quadplexes, bungalow courts, things like that. There's also mixed use, lots of mixed use options you can do. And we've heard a lot of that and how to create those mixed use options. How would this look? We have a street here on Brandon Ave, and you can really it's an unbuilt property. You can really start incorporating a lot of those different housing types into here. There's options that you have. And it makes it more financially feasible for a developer to put multiple units on there. It's a way to incentivize these things. So there's lots of options that you can do with creating these things. And after housing it, there comes complementary uses. And really what we're talking about is just that neighborhood commercial. It's taking these really cool, and this was obviously a commercial structure before, whenever that was, whenever it has seen its heyday. And it's revitalizing that. It's bringing it back to those traditional neighborhood designs. There's a lot of tools and strategies to do this. Update regulations. A unified development code would be one of those. Form-based controls. Maybe maybe the use doesn't matter so much. Maybe just the way the building looks. That's what form-based at its core really is. Pre-development meetings, having more dialogue between the city and people who are trying to do these things. It's those things, that dialogue provides education and expectations that way, and you start building that trust. And once you start doing this over time, trust is built with consistency. That's what essentially these tools and strategies are. It's a way for staff and for people, for residents, to really to understand how things work. And if it consistently happens over time, then that's what builds that trust. We have all these properties and we don't know what to do with them. Something that we heard, people inherited. We can't find these property owners. There's just these vacant lots that nobody knows what to do with them. Somebody inherited it and we can't find that heir. Yeah, I mean, we heard that a lot. It's a big, it's preventing a lot. And I hope everybody drank their coffee this morning, because I'm just going to talk a little bit about law right now. Technically speaking, Beaumont cannot land bank. It is not big enough. You have to be over 1 million people to land bank. Effectively, though, Beaumont can land bank. There are sections of the state law that would allow you to create nonprofits and corporations, and that would allow you to effectively land bank. It's a process. It's a big lift. This Articles of Incorporations that you see here is from Houston in 1999. They did this. They called it the Land Assemblage Redevelopment Authority. That was their authority to do it. They created a local government corporation, and they adopted certain financing rules. And this was done in 1999. It was a long time ago. The current land banking state code was drafted in 2007. So this was before the urban land banking was even really a concept in Texas. There's another option to do it as well. You can convey the properties to nonprofits. You can find a partner to do it. It's a long process. There's a lot that goes into it. You have to choose that vehicle, option 1 or 2. You have to define the public purpose, repurposing vacant land, revitalizing neighborhoods, things like that. You'll be drafting those charters. You'll do that. It's important, interlocal agreements. You have to, enter into agreements with the counties, with the school district, any taxing units, anything that levies taxes and that has the ability to foreclose, to take that property. You'd have to set acquisition rules, right? How the city or this nonprofit, whatever vehicle you choose acquires these lands. And then you have to set really transparent disposition rules, how it sells, right? This is where a lot of communities get in trouble about how they get rid of these properties and who gets these properties. As long as you're transparent, you'll be fine. There has to be governance and accountability. You have to have a body that meets. It has to be public. It has to be, it has to have open meetings. They have to be recorded, things like that. And finally, the first step, and really the last step, is to prove the concept. Start small. Do it once or twice. Scale it up. The first year, you're doing all these other things. It takes a long time to do a lot of this stuff. It's a process. But you can do this in the first year, and then by year 2, you can start moving some properties. This is just one avenue. It's a possibility. So, big idea number 5, leverage your heritage and institutions as an engine for innovation. So we heard this from one of the participants. Quality of life is what determines whether students graduate and leave or stay and contribute to the city's future. We're talking about Lamar. It doesn't feel like a college town. And then we put this at the end, yet. So, a lot of college towns, they have these, this micro-urbanism, these like little tight-knit areas around these colleges. You see it in Paris, you see it in Cambridge, you see it in Providence, Rhode Island. But I think a model that can be easily adapted here is Norman. Norman, Oklahoma, their college district started with one corner, just one little corner of shops and restaurants that created this lively campus life. We went to Lamar. We looked around. There is, on the very northwest corner, northwest piece of the campus, there is this corner on Jimmy Simmons and East Lavaca. It's empty. There's nothing there right now. What if you can create that lively corner right there? Maybe that's all you need. Maybe that's the first step. There's offices, there's apartments, there's shops, there's on-street parking. You have safe crosswalks. That's important, building on what Frank was talking about, on complete streets. You have to have those street trees. You need that shade. It's hot. It gets hot here. It was hot yesterday. It's February. And, the street life would be lively. You would see these things, and it would be welcoming, and it would be fun, and it would be inviting. And then you can create a trolley, right? You can increase those mobility options that we talked about earlier. Once you have more people who are willing to go downtown or go to Lamar and go to different places, you can create that trolley that sort of acts as like a dedicated circuit from to and from Lamar, wherever that may be. So resilience is a big component of this plan, and we talked a little about economic resilience earlier, and how improving certain things can lead to better city functions and to a more diversified economy. But our colleagues at PATA, they really put together a lot of infrastructure resilience themes, and they talk about how aging infrastructure affects reliability and maintenance. They talk about how the desire for infrastructure enhances the quality of life. They also talked about that a lot of utility capacity here supports these ideas. There's a lot of good infrastructure here already. Tagging on to what Alfonso was mentioning, when you're creating these parks and you're creating these trails, you can integrate detention, and you can do a dual purpose, right? You can create a trail, you can create a park that also services as a detention pond when it floods. You might not be able to use it for a weekend or a week, but once it dries up, you can go back to using it again. And there's funds available if you have that infrastructure, right? You can build a park effectively with funds that are meant for resiliency projects. The water system here, we learned about how the infrastructure has varying ages. There's a demand and increasing in older segments, right? But there's some capacity concerns around the edges, and we learned a lot about that. But the system reliability does support the economic development goals, as we mentioned earlier. We talked about how the gravity sewer system and it's serving established older neighborhoods. The aging pipes contribute to maintenance and concerns, right? The lift stations are critical during heavy rain events. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's going to go into this plan, and some goals and recommendations that are going to come out of it. As Frank mentioned, as we implement these complete streets, as we're doing these things, you can coordinate your water improvement efforts as well with these street constructions. You can do two things at once, two birds with one stone, if you will. And you can enhance that redundancy and resiliency and correct kind of water planning. A lot of it's important to prioritize rehabilitation of aging sewer mains, right? This is going to be a big component of this plan. Improving lift stations, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is going to be a big thing. And aligning the sewer capacity and planning with what our land use components of this plan is going to be. So all these things, flood mitigation, these things we're talking about, they enhance the resiliency of neighborhoods, the stability of neighborhoods. This coordinated infrastructure improves investor confidence. These things lead to economic development as well. Strong infrastructure creates economic development. The capital improvement planning, that's going to be a big component of this. The asset prevention and system reliability, capacity and targeted growth areas, multi-use and community enhancing projects. This is what we've been talking about. Drainage is a big issue here. Older neighborhoods were developed before modern detention standards. There's reoccurring localized flooding constantly. And the community preference is for functional but visually integrated solutions. This is what we heard during our focus groups about infrastructure. What does that functional but visually integrated, that looks like this. There's bioswales, there's bioretention basins, there's tree filter pits, there's all kinds of things you can do, porous pavement, constructed wetlands. Cattail Marsh is a constructed wetland, and it acts, it's amazing. We went there yesterday and we got to see alligators and birds, so many kinds of birds. It was kind of wild, actually. I mean, you're doing these things. You already have these assets. You just just leverage them, keep going. Speaking of leverage, Lamar University is doing a lot of this work right now. They're doing pilot programs for permeable pavement, for rain gardens, for bioswales on campus right now. Lamar University is also a member of the Southeast Texas Urban Integrated Field Laboratories. There's only 4 in the whole country, and there's one right here in Southeast Texas, and Lamar University is a member of that. So they're doing research right now for resiliency. So when we talk about leveraging those institutions, we're talking about, becoming a partner with Lamar. It just so happens on March 26th, I'm giving a plug for Lamar right now, that there is a Resiliency Through History conference. Resiliency through history, I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about through this whole charrette, right? And Lamar's doing it too. They've recognized it as well. There's a lot of opportunity for collaboration with the university. Speaking of which, we heard this from a resident. I would love to see a satellite campus, a Lamar satellite campus downtown. Makes sense, makes a lot of sense. A lot of cities do this, okay? In Winston-Salem in North Carolina, they took a tobacco factory and they turned it into Wake Forest's innovation district. That's a lot, right? That's a huge facility, a lot of investment. It doesn't have to be that big. Sacramento State took a empty 3,000 square foot office, turned it into their School of Public Affairs. Now it's become a lively little node of downtown. Flint, Michigan took an empty building, turned it into their Culinary Arts Institute, gave it a facelift, makes it great, and even there's a little test kitchen there with where you can eat at times. So these are ways that you can. It's demonstrated to be effective in other parts of the country. So we'll leave you here with what we say is become city makers. We always in these presentations with our call to action. Our plan for active transportation, our support local events and activities, and your economic development. Empower yourself with data, cultivate arts and cultural community. This is our call to action for every community, but we don't really have to do that here in Beaumont. You're already doing it. You're already doing it pretty well, and you already recognize that. I want to remind everyone that we have the website, planbeaumont.com. There's a community survey up until March 20th. And all these slides, everything that we've been talking about this week, we're going to put up onto this website. You'll be able to see every focus group slide, and any upcoming events and dates are going to be up there as well. So I have a request for everyone to pull out their phones and to scan this QR code and to tell us if we're on the right track, if this plan is on the right track. Let us know if we have heard you, if we got it right, if maybe we didn't, maybe we need more, maybe you're not sure. That's okay. Let us know. I'm waiting for everybody to see, make sure they scanned it. Okay. I think most everyone voted. Okay. That is all that we have for you today. And I just want to say thank you so much for having us out. We've had a wonderful time. Staff has been so hospitable and so amazing. Same with the library staff. They were great. Great host as we had our open studio there. So I'd like For all of us to just give ourselves a round of applause for having a great charrette week. Yeah. Thank you so much. Here's our contact information. If you'd like, feel free to send us an email. If you have any questions, let us know. You can also contact us on the website. Thank you.